Lawrence, you've uncovered a very interesting story in the nation of Senegal. Why don't you give us a little introduction to it?
Sure. So Senegal is a small country in West Africa.
Okay.
13 million people, relatively poor, but has a great reputation for attracting international investment because they're a democracy.
It won a Millennium Challenge grant, am I correct?
Right. It's so good, in fact, that the U.S. wanted to reward it with $540 million in development assistance over 5 years because they're sort of a model for other emerging markets in how they govern the country. But Business Insider has exclusively obtained documents that show, according to a telecom company, Millicom, that the president's son, who's now a powerful minister, illegally demanded $200 million for this telecom company to keep their 20-year license in the country and continue to serve customers there.
So they believe it's totally illegal, and in your opinion, or the way you read it, is their interpretation of the law correct?
Well, I don't want to say. I mean, the matter is before a World Bank court, and so I'll let them figure out all the complicated legal history. But according to Millicom, the president's son was very clear. He said, essentially, give Senegal $200 million or you'll lose your license.
So is this kind of how they do it in the movies? Did they go to some secret room and they slam down a briefcase and it opened up? Or how do these kind of things go down?
I don't know the specifics. I know there was a meeting in Paris between the CEO of this company and the president's son, who at the time was not an official minister, so that's raised some questions in the Senegalese press. Basically, the whole negotiation was behind closed doors, which is at the same time that the Senegalese government is touting their transparency for international investment. So this shows that if you're trying to, according to Millicom, if you're trying to do the right thing and invest in a poor country and build out their infrastructure, it's still very hard, even in the quote-unquote best places.
So this story is apparently shaking at the foundations of the Senegalese government. Is this potentially putting in jeopardy the money they could get from the Millennium Challenge grant they're set to get?
After Business Insider published its exclusive on this alleged shakedown, both American and Senegalese officials who were responsible for this $500 million in aid assured their constituents it's safe. That said, the allegations we reported and other concerns about corruption have started to change perceptions of the country, and the Millennium Challenge account award is based on different indicators, one of them being corruption. And if Senegal doesn't pass the next round, which I think is later this year, they could potentially lose the funding.
And now the ruling family, this isn't the first time there's been some issues raised with them. You, in your report, discussed some of the lavish spending that they've taken on. Can you go into that a little bit more?
Right. So Senegal, just as background, enjoys this relatively good reputation in the international community, but over the last 5 or 6 years, let's say, there's been a lot of, let's say, questionable spending decisions. One example is a statue called the Monument of the African Renaissance that is larger than the Statue of Liberty off the coast of Dakar, which is the capital, which the government allegedly paid something like $70 million to North Korean bronze sculptors to make this grandiose statue, which, perhaps that's a good idea, but this is at a time where the average Senegalese person remains dirt poor.
Right. So what's next? What's the Senegalese government trying to do right now, and what's the status of the Millicom case?
Well, the Millicom case is still before a World Bank court that settles investment disputes between countries and companies. In terms of the reaction to the article, the Prime Minister has slammed it, the President's son.
Have they commented officially to us?
No, this is what's interesting. So the President's son has attacked me personally in the Business Insider, essentially for slander, saying that we did not make any real credible attempt to get his side of the story.
Did you?
In fact, I reached out numerous times to the Senegalese embassy in Washington via fax, via phone, via email, multiple times each. They never responded. Now, again, I've said, listen, I'm happy to hear the other side of the story, and I've received finally a communique from the embassy in Washington saying we've received the request, but it's been a week and I haven't heard anything back.
Any other thoughts you'd like to add, or sort of broader insights on what this story all means?
Sure. Well, again, it shows that even in what are seen as the best, safest emerging markets, dealing with overly influential, high-level government officials makes business transactions very difficult.
Well, thank you very much for talking to us today. We're eager to keep following the story and see how it develops. I'm sure it'll be incredibly interesting. And thank you for joining in.